So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for this quick lunch parenting pause. We are excited to talk with you today about the fear of falling behind. We know this is a hot topic for a lot of families as this whole year has progressed. So this morning we are joined by Brandy Taylor, our training manager at A+ Schools. She has a younger son and an older daughter, so she's very familiar with this topic. And Nicole Sims, who is our parent lead, and she is a mother of two daughters and a grandmother to a granddaughter. So she also knows the joys of juggling all of this. So they're here to talk with you today about their experience and some tips. So the flow that we have for today is that Brandy will start us off with some introductions and then jump into the 3 tips. Nicole will then share the some personal experiences and some details related to those tips. While they're both sharing, I'll be dropping in the chat different links for information related to what they're talking about or resources and supports that are connected to these topics. So you'll see those dropped in the chat. And then after that, we do want to leave about 10 minutes at the end for you all to chime in to either ask questions or share tips that you are experiencing too. And that while we're having this conversation, feel free to drop those things in the chat too, and we can respond to them and also bring those up later when we open it up for conversation. So, and then we'll wrap it up at the end with our contact information, social media links, all of that, so you know how to keep this conversation going with us. So without further ado, Brandy.
Thank you, Amy. Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. Like she said, my name is Brandy Taylor. I am a training manager here at A+ Schools. And yes, I have 2 children. I have an older daughter she's going to be 23. And then I have a younger son, and he is 9 years old. And so I oftentimes have to manage my anxiety around my son succeeding and making sure that he does not fall behind academically. So we kind of brainstormed on how we could do something with the parents around managing the fear of falling behind, and how could we do it during a time that people would kind of tune in. So here we are, and thank you again. So I just again, title Managing the Fear of Falling Behind. So in the last year or so, we have been stressed out about COVID-19 and this pandemic. So we've seen like it rise, we've seen it fall, and even the economy. We have fears about our children's health, their safety, and a whole lot about their ability to academically, excel. So today we just want to have an open conversation and some dialogue about the way that others manage their anxiety or fear about that, the inability of their children to keep up now that everything is virtual, and then we'll share some tips ourselves on how we have been able to manage it. So just throughout this year, we've kept a close eye on what's going on with COVID-19. And so now we're basically in the reopening phase. Governor Wolf is like, okay, on April 4th, we'll start allowing places to open at a 75% capacity. And so now we know that schools are returning, and parents we have a sense of relief because of that now. The health risk that was involved is decreasing, and they're doing a whole lot of things to keep our children safe. But one of the major concerns that continues to linger is the academic loss. So the months that they were virtually, that's still something that keeps us high in anxiety and stress. So we've had another one of these parenting pauses, and I've kept the parents encouraged. And 3 things how I keep them encouraged is to make sure that you choose patience over productivity, because you're dealing with something completely different. Be patient and understand that productivity will come. This is something completely different out of the norm. Also, showing yourself some grace. that I mention that all the time, beyond the parenting pauses in trainings, when I meet other parents on the streets and things like that. Just show yourself some grace, and be creative in that. The other thing that I stress is to shut down any and all of the societal expectations over what normalcy looks like. Do your best for what works for you and your family. Don't try to fit into this cookie cutter thing or even follow what's working in your neighbor's household. Do what works for yourself and kind of put that societal expectations of how well you should be doing out of your head. And again, like I said, we this is probably our second parenting pause, and those are the three things that I continually stress. So the tips in regards to managing this stress, right? I only have three, but I think that they're very helpful. And like Amy mentioned, following our dialogue, we would love for you to share some things with us that you do that may work, or piggyback off of some things that we may share. So the first tip that I had is to be sure to have an open line of communication with your child's teacher. Sometimes we don't have that communication, and we're just so busy, and we're just checking the responses on the papers or what have you from your child with their getting back. So if you keep that line of communication open, it will avoid like just getting a test result at the last minute and it raising your level of stress. So make sure that that open line of communication includes a time that works best for you, where you're not doing two things at the same time, where you can actually focus and that you're not going out of your way, but just making sure you're staying in the loop throughout the week or whatever works best for you. Because maybe the week doesn't work for you. It may be bi-weekly. Also, checking your local school district's website, also checking their Facebook page or any of their social media platforms, because those are oftentimes updated and you can go on there and get some clarity. Things like something as simple as when the schools will open and what to expect in the days. Like, are they staggering? Is it only 2 days a week? All of that type of information will be helpful. So the second tip is I do this often is to stop and drop whatever it is that you're thinking about. If you are if you feel yourself getting a little anxious, stop and drop it. Um, that helps the rush of the hormones that can induce stress. So we want to make sure that we can keep that under control, allowing you time to be able to respond to your feelings properly. So what I done is I use like this filtering process, and it helps me to acknowledge my feelings. To be it helps me to be more aware and able to provide um, a not an emotional reaction, but a more of an appropriate response, because I'm really emotional. So I want to stop again and be mindful of the appropriate response. Um, the third thing that I do as well is calming my mind. I do this through a form of meditating, and that's something kind of new, but I'm doing it regularly. But calming your mind and taking charge of your thoughts is really helpful. Empowering yourself and your family to do creative things and making sure that you stay in a positive mind frame. Sometimes this is, what people do all the time, but there are a lot of people who are not mindful of staying in that positive place, and doing things that are creative that can keep your mind off of, the busyness of the day. Um, Doing something creative and different, something as simple as preparing a different type meal. And I did that myself. For Amy and Nicole, they know me. I don't cook much, but I came up with this really healthy meal, and it was completely different. And we were excited. We were so excited. We ate it for like 3 days. Like after we finished it, we ate more. I cooked it again. So that's just taking your mind off of things, calming your mind. So I'll reiterate the three tips. Making sure you keep the lines of communication open with your child's teacher will reduce your, I guess, anxiety or stress in not knowing, and just getting bopped with um, I'll say a negative grade or a report back. Then there's also being mindful to stop and drop whatever it is that you're thinking about that you know that is kind of triggering your emotion. And then the third would be able to just calm your mind and doing something creative. I just used the example of the meal, the cooking the meal that was different. So, all
Oh,
right,
Nicole,
you're
you're
on
muted.
mute. Okay.
Yeah, we're all still trying to get used to this technology. So thanks, Brandy. Welcome again, everyone. I just wanted to add to that. I mentioned being really excited or like looking forward to this conversation because I was already working on being a more restorative parent most of the time before COVID started. But with all the added ambiguity and stress around the pandemic, my focus on like reducing stress and conflict really took a back seat. So now that things are beginning to normalize a little bit, I'm excited about reprioritizing those restorative practice techniques to help me manage the stress that I'm feeling, but also that my children and my family is experiencing. Because we know that even though things are sort of, getting a little bit better, none of those stresses are going to go away completely. So um, I say that the number one stressor, like lately, has been school, really, for me. Um, and I have an eighth grader who is like a really self motivated finisher. I call her the finisher um, because, she just gets the job done and she's doing well. But even then, there's a lot of tension for both of us. I did mention, or maybe I didn't, she's a teenager, an eighth grader. And then there's stress, around managing her schedule and sort of helping her stay really positive and have a positive mindset because sometimes she can be pretty pessimistic. She's one of those people that says, I can't do it while I'm getting it done. And we know that can be stressful for us too as parents. So I'm trying, try to manage that and make sure that it doesn't impact my own mood and like the way I kind of feel and react to your point, Brandy. Mm-hmm. About our reactions. So then I had my granddaughter who's in the fourth grade, love her to death. She's funny. She's really outgoing. We call her Love Fest, Brandy and I, but student is not high on her like radar. A great student is not just like on her list of things to be. So it's a constant battle with her, keeping her engaged and keeping her up to speed with like assignments and academic things. So I'm often really afraid and I'm managing the stress behind, how far behind is she? Is she going to fall further behind? So some of the things that I like to do to minimize and cope with the stress of that whole like getting left behind is Brandy mentioned communicating regularly with the teachers. So I do that via an app or I like email them and make sure they have my contact information so I can avoid huge amounts of work. I know when the pandemic first started, she was like so far behind and we had to do all this catch up. So I try to avoid that now. And even we use apps like Google Classroom. So I know a lot of other parents use that too. And you can register for a daily or a weekly report. So I stop stressing myself out every day. Is your homework done? Did you do this? Did you do this? I get a weekly report. And if she wants to spend part of her weekend making up assignments from the week, then so be it. Less stress on me, and I can help her manage that also. Another thing I like to mention in case it's helpful for anyone is I add everything to my calendar. I used to not do that, and then I would be all stressed out because I would be missing like meetings or important appointments and stuff. So I just keep my little calendar widget on my phone and I add everything on it, work, personal, kids appointments. That's really helpful to alleviate stress. I look at my calendar at night and in the morning, and it helps me tremendously. I stick to a routine as much as possible. And I should probably say I stick to a loose routine because I don't have like a real, specific one, but I find that when we have a routine, even when things pop up and there's different distractions that take us off course, it's easier to pick back up where we left off. And conflict. So when conflict does arise between myself and my children, or between the two of them, I think that I do take a step back and I try to think of an appropriate response, because I think sometimes there can be, many, and I try to think about how I could be the most restorative at that particular time. Um, and just, to make sure that I'm not acting harshly, because all that does is exacerbate matters. And then, it makes everybody feel worse. So just taking a step back. Sometimes that looks like, okay, good night, you can go to bed, and it's 6 o'clock. And I'm like, I'm not gonna stress myself out. So whatever works for you, just, take a step back and make sure you do that. And then I would say, most importantly for me, one of the tips that I use is to ask for help. And it seems simple, but when you're somebody that's not used to doing that, and like me, my t-shirt today says "Mom Game Strong." And so usually I'm like, I got this. So I try to remember to ask for help. And I work on trying to remind my kids to ask for help, so that, helps alleviate some of their stress also. And yeah, that's kind of.
I like that. I like the fact that you said you do ask for help. So that's probably one of the challenging things that a lot of people go through. Like, they don't feel like anyone is going to understand, or they don't want anyone to know that they are stressing about something that another person is just acing, right? So that would be me oftentimes. But ask for help with your supports, and lean on maybe family members, but just make sure you ask. Like, Amy has been dropping resources in the chat for different things, so you can go through, see what fits you and your needs. But there are some resources that we could always share with you. For now, she's dropping a few in the chat line, and that's considered help.
Yep, Amy got it going on. Thanks, Amy. So what about, all of you? We wanted this to be really sort of like interactive. We wanted to share tips and information, but we also wanted to hear from other moms or dads or caregivers with children in school, and find out from you, how do you manage the stress of falling behind during these difficult times of like remote learning or hybrid learning? Does anyone like to share with us?
And also, if there's any questions at this time too, feel free to ask right now.
So go ahead. I see you were getting ready to talk. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so
What happened?
I think she got muted.
Sorry, did I mute myself again?
Yeah.
I've definitely also been like taking a lot of advantage of the apps. Like, our school uses like the Class Dojo and stuff to keep the teachers, and I so appreciate like how communicative they are about what's going on. And I find like I actually have like a struggle of, on one hand, I'm trying to scaffold my son and help him deal with like the stress of, remote learning. And on the other hand, I'm also trying to like not helicopter though. You know what I mean? Like, especially with, I find myself wanting to like correct, like if he's giving an answer and I think I know what he means better than he's explaining it, you know what I mean? I'm trying to be like, if he was at school, I wouldn't even hear what he was saying. Like, I need to himself and just do what he's doing and like step back. And I think sometimes I'm more stressed about his school than he is. Like, I think he definitely hates that it's virtual versus being in person. Like, he complains about that all the time, that he misses being like with actual people, and that he thinks it's so much more boring.
Yeah, what grade, Aaron, if you don't mind me asking?
No problem. He's a first grader.
First grade. Okay.
So it's like, it's one of those situations where it's like, I don't think he's ahead of the material at all, but I think it's just that the amount of time they spend on each new thing to make sure no one's left behind. Like he's not like, oh, he should be ahead of grade or something like that, but it's just he could be moving ahead or working on something else while some of the other students are still, you know what I mean? But it's just like virtual learning, there's no way for them to like break into small groups easily, or say like, okay, you guys go over to like the reading circle and read for a while or something, you know what I mean? So I'm trying to, on one hand, say like, okay, well, if you feel like you're caught up and you've worked ahead on this chapter, like you can read a book for a little while, but then I know I'm going to have to be the one making sure that he starts paying attention again when it's time to pay attention. Like he's not going to come back on his own and the teacher doesn't know what's going on. So it's just like this struggle between, am I doing enough? Am I doing too much? You know, so it's like it's unprecedented to have to be like the adult managing his school involvement. And, you know, that's it for me.
What that was a lot, Erin, and I appreciate you sharing. I wrote tons of notes down. And I'm going to start with you said the balance. So unfortunately, you have not been part of my restorative practice training, but there's a tool that I talk about, which is that social discipline window. And that is the social discipline window helps you to balance the accountability part and then the nurturing part. So you want to be restorative because you want to say, okay, so here's the expectations of what you have to do, but here, how can I help you? Well, probably not to your first grader, but you'll know in what way you need to assist him. You don't want to be helicopter-ish. So, okay, I have accountability and I have support. That's where I am. So I want to reiterate, you have to do what works best for you. One of the reasons why is because Nicole prefers weekly updates. I do not want to talk to anyone weekly. I check in with my son and I'm good. I can use a maybe a once a month because I'm checking in with him every day. I'm seeing his work. I'm checking class dojo. That's the greatest thing since sliced bread. So you know what works for you is one thing, and then I put remembering to the patient's over productivity. You know, it's not the same because you would not hear what he was responding. So that is why I stay out of my son's education area, because when I go in there, I'm like, wait, you know that answer. So why didn't you do that? You know, and so I stay back, I stay away. I just like listen at a distance. And what else did I have on here? Yep, that was it. So do what works best for you and your family. It doesn't if what works for the other person may not work for you. But like to the point, the routine and the communication, it's needed, but make sure that it works for you and your family. Don't be so hard on yourself because this is new. And then be mindful that, you know, even if he is behind, just use more patience. Now, one thing I wanted to say is that my son's, well, he's in the third grade, so he's 2 grades ahead of your son. They do that though. They have breakout sessions because there are children who are, you know, not on the same page. So they will make sure that this group is doing one thing and this group is doing another thing. So if you want to, you should suggest it.
Yeah, they very recently started having like one period of that each day, but basically
Okay.
kids who aren't behind, they're just drawing a picture. It's like art class. They just, and I'm just, not that that's not nice, but I'm just like, can't it be like something enriching?
Education, yes. And
so I asked permission, and I did. I asked permission. I was like, can my son do something else during this period? Like, because, you know, not handing in the pictures they're drawing or whatever. And the teacher was like, yeah, that's fine, whatever. So I'm just like, you know, giving him my own, this is what you're going to work on.
Yeah, Nicole's talked about that before too, where she's asked the teachers for even the grade above to say, can I have worksheets, or do you have extra worksheets for the next thing they're going to be working on? And I did drop in the link in the chat too from WQED. There are grade level worksheets too. So but Nicole is and that falls into line with the keeping the lines of communication open. So you're already talking to them, but Nicole frames it as a question.
I was going to say, I'm sorry, Amy.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I've actually asked for like the curriculum for the class, like Amy said, and they'll give it to you, and so you know what to start working on, you know, so that he's sort of advanced. But good point, Amy. I forgot about that.
Yeah. Show yourself some grace, Erin.
Yeah, and I was gonna say too, so for Erin and Brandy, I don't know if this will help, but that drives me crazy because my granddaughter's like that. She'll just be like all over the place. So I have it set up where like I'm working in one room and she's in the room next to me where I can like close a door and I can kind of overhear. And I make sure I don't engage unless it's something like really out of control. But I can hear when the teacher says like, okay, you've got a 10-minute break. And I don't really watch the clock, but then I can hear when everybody comes back. And if she's not there, I'm like, what are you doing? So that helps me. It alleviates a little bit of stress because she's not right with me, but I can still overhear what's happening when I need to engage.
Yep.
Were you going to say something, Renissa?
Renissa, yeah.
Renissa.
Yeah, I was going to say one quick thing to piggyback on that, and then I did have a question also. But I think the other piece that I found is you just have to really enhance your own self-care, because it's really maddening, I think, at the end of the day. You know, we're parents, we're working, you're now teaching, and I think just making sure to set boundaries and set limits and take care of ourselves. I think that is so important. And if that means walking away and an assignment isn't done, it's okay. I think we need to be able to take care of ourselves in order to best help our kids really to be able to succeed. But my question, my question was, one of my biggest worries as a parent, I have 2 kids, is not just falling behind academically, but what this is all going to do to their mental health when they reintegrate into schools and what's going to happen. So I was wondering, we probably don't have time for that today, but if that's another topic that we could hit on, or if anyone has any other thoughts on that.
Absolutely, we can. I actually suggested to Amy that we not recruit the topics, because I felt like it would be for this particular session anyway, a bit overwhelming, but we were going to try to get feedback because we want to have these little topics that are helpful. We don't want to just keep, pulling topics out of the air that, people don't want to hear, but that parent hotline that she's dropped in the chat is how we have a lot of our conversations, what we build them around, because there were people who, left some suggestions there. So we didn't really want to overwhelm you with requesting that, but I'm glad that you asked that, and we will get some things together for you. Absolutely.
Great.
Yep.
I'll be sharing a survey at the end too, where if you are able to fill that out, it just takes a few minutes. And I did leave a box to say if you have any suggestions. So you definitely get to chime in there. There are 2 links I did drop in the chat that are, I think, related to this. One was from PBS Kids, and it's around how you and your kids can de-stress during this time, which it ties into, there's some components of that ties into the mental health aspect of this as well too, and making sure we're taking care of that, our mental health and emotional well-being. And then I did drop in for the parents on the call, this is more geared towards you and not towards your kids per se, but there's what's called a warm line, and it's peer support. So you can call in and talk to a peer and just say like, I'm overwhelmed, or like I am having a really rough day. And it's just a way of like reaching out to somebody. Sometimes it's helpful to have kind of that unbiased or like distant somebody you can vent to. I know we all have, friends or family that we can reach out to, but this is a chance for you to, and when you share with them, they just want to swoop in and help, or they might have their opinions that you're like, that's not helpful. But this is a kind of unbiased, neutral way of getting some support for you as well too. So those are 2 links we dropped in the chat this time, but to Brandy's point, we can definitely pull some more resources and delve into this some more too. So
Yep.
Would anyone else like to share? Thank you all for your responses and how we could be more helpful. We love it. Thank you for sharing.
I think there's definitely something to be said about just sharing, and you kind of know you're not alone in a particular thing. But even to like listening to Erin and hearing like, okay, they're on a break, and what time do you don't want to like helicopter. those are all like the same things that we're each dealing with. And so it's just good to know that we're not alone in it, and
Right.
to share helpful tips. Because even when I remember when COVID started and somebody in one of these spaces said to me like, oh, I do puzzles with my kids, like to relieve stress and get outside to like the porch when we really sort of hunkered in. And I would have never thought of that. And now we're still using puzzles to just have some family time and talk. And so you'd be surprised what just opening up in a space like this can be helpful for us. So I appreciate you all coming and sharing also.
I
Thank
was
you.
glad to hear the word helicopter as well. I'm not the only person that's like, what are you doing? What's next? How'd you do it? Did you write that? I want you to write that word over. It's not. Yeah, sometimes
I would say too, if nobody else was going to jump in again, to on top of what Renisa said about like emotional well-being, also like one of the big fears I have is how my kids falling behind social emotional learning. You know what I mean? Like not being among peers, I think really affects his behavior and with and his his development in ways. And without, I think that there are certain things that if he were around other kids, he would just sort of see like, oh, everyone's doing this, I'm going to do it. And as a parent at home with just him, I don't know now, are these things that are something problematic about him, like something I should talk to his doctor about, or are these just things that he would be picking up and doing more naturally if he were among his peers? You know what I mean? Like, is it something that he's missing out on because of the unusual circumstances of COVID, or is this like something developmental I should be worried about? You know what I mean? Like, I just think I would, there's nothing to be done about it. It's health and safety is more important than, play. But it's just, that's a big stress for me. My son's young for his grade. He's a summer birthday. So I was like really, looking, we don't have peer like children in our neighborhood really. The cousins his age don't live nearby. So it's just him and his little brother. And now I'm like, you can't go through life treating everybody like you treat your little brother, but he's just experiences. And that's something that really stresses me out. Like, I don't want him to go back to school and be the weird kid, that acts weird and everybody like picks on him or something because he just didn't like make the mistakes young and learn to be on the level of all the other,
Yeah.
So I did. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Brandy.
I was just going to say that although it seems like an eternity for us, it hasn't. It has been a year, which is a long time. But I don't think that anything that has happened really that the children cannot recoup from. And the best part of it is that they are young and they bounce back. So no matter how he's treating his little brother, I think that the moment that he is back in with his friends and doing those things, that he'll pick right back up. I think we allow our thoughts to get away from us, like, oh my goodness, when he goes back to school now he's going to be antisocial, like she said, he's going to be the weird kid. Like, no. It's just a matter of us trying to keep the children encouraged, like being more positive, having that talk. It'll be a little different when you go back in. It won't just be your little brother. I talk to my son so much. That's probably what he's going to say, like, my mother talks so much. Your mother talk like that? Because we talk like over the top, and I'm sharing experiences and why I do certain things and how it looks in school and how you can only be around this this child because I don't it's like a whole lot of front loading. So nope, I would go against you being fearful of that. But I think we can all, when we do go create a parenting pause specifically around the social and emotional piece for the children, we'll be sure to add like, okay, so try these type things.
Yeah.
So I've dropped in the chat too. Those are two other resources. One is the community learning hubs that exist all around the city. And then the other one is the link to Bridge to Summer, which they're in the process of updating that right now. So please keep checking back on that because a lot of that's information from last year. But that link will give you a list of all of the summer programs that are offered throughout the city, summer programs and summer opportunities that exist. So again, to to the social aspect you're talking about, you can check those out as ways of getting your kid involved in things. I know like Boys and Girls Club and a lot of them that are even doing the hubs and have plans for summer are doing a lot to be really safe with their protocols and checking temperatures on the way in, like doing a whole bunch of tracking to make sure that they're really, really safe and thorough in what they're and what they're doing for in-person programming. So if you want to check those out too as a way to get your son involved in something either now or over the summer to also help with the social side, those are 2 other links that I dropped in the chat.
Great points, Amy.
Thanks.
Thanks, Aim.
Thanks to all of you. So, so thank you all. So I think we're running out of time now. So just a couple other quick things too. Also in the chat, we shared a link for the Gwen's Girls tutoring program. I believe right now they're off of a wait list again too, but if they are, they're really great at getting in touch with you and keeping you informed on next steps. So if you're looking for academic support for your kid too, you can sign them up through that Gwen's Girls link. We also put in our school choice and enrollment guide, a link to our page around that. That's something that myself, Nicole, and Brandy are really well versed in. So if you need help kind of thinking through what school options you have, please don't hesitate to contact us. I dropped our emails in the chat too. And I think that is all of the links that I shared. And like Brandy mentioned too, we do have our own personal family hotline that we do with some of our community partners. And we'll be running that through May and a plan to continue it afterwards too, but it just might, the structure might shift a little bit, but you can always call into that line. And we have people answering calls live throughout the week, Nicole being one of them.
I'm going straight after we hang up. I'm on there for the next few hours. So.
Right. Yeah, so you can chat with Nicole and get some tips or leave a message, and anyone from our partners or partner organizations will call back too. And then the last thing, so
you're muted.
Sorry. Thank you. Thank you. I'm dropping in the chat the link to the survey. If you have a few quick minutes to fill that out, I think it's 5 questions. And please make sure you share your email in it, because we'll, from the 4 or 5 of you that joined today, we'll pull a name, and whoever wins will get a Target gift card emailed to you. So we appreciate your time and in this workshop, and then also giving us some feedback on next steps. So I apologize, my dog picked up a squeaky toy, but but that is all for us today. Thank you so much for joining us. We will have more of these. We have one coming up in June. So keep an eye out on, I dropped all of our social media pages into this. We're going to put this video on our YouTube page and share that through our social media pages. So please make sure to check that out and share with your friends, and encourage them to follow us too, so that they can join us for the June workshop. Thank you all.
Is it June or is it May, Amy?
June, the end of June we put it for.
Okay. All righty. Thank you.
This was awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care.